when you can see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, very good. More challenges. Anyway, let's continue here. Okay. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 47 and 48. Tadhyanudriktya bhaktya vishuddha dishana pare tasmin narayana pade ekanta matayo gatim avapu durvapam te asadbhir vishayatmabhi vidhuta kalmasha sthanam virajenatmanaivahi tadhyanudriktaya bhaktya vishuddha dishana pare tasmin narayana pade ekanta matayo gatim avapu duravapam te asadbhir vishayatmabhi viduta kalmashasthanam virajenatmanaivahi. Synonyms: that, dhyana, positive meditation, uttriktaya, being freed from, bhaktya, by a devotional attitude, vishuddha, purified, dishana, by intelligence, pare, unto the transcendence, tasmin, in that, Narayana, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, pade, unto the lotus feet, ekanta mataya, of those who are fixed in the Supreme, who is one, gatim, destination, avapu, attained, duravapam, very difficult to obtain, te, by them, asadbhi, by the materialists, vishayatmabhi, absorbed in material needs, vidhuta, washed off, kalmasaha, material contaminations, sthanam, abode, virajena, without material passion, atmana eva, by the self-same body, he, certainly. Translation: thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed off all material contamination, attained that abode in the very same bodies. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, a person freed from the three modes of material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Hari Bhakta Vilasa says that a person, whatever he may be, can attain the perfection of a twice-born Brahmana by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, exactly as a chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by chemical manipulation. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahmana, even without a change of body or in going back to Godhead, without change of body. Jiva Goswami remarks that the word he used in this connection positively affirms this truth, and there is no doubt about this factual position. The Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also affirms the statement of Jiva Goswami when the Lord says that anyone who executes devotional service systematically without deviation can attain the perfection of Brahman by surpassing the contamination of three modes of material nature. And when the Brahman perfection is still more advanced by the self-same execution of devotional service, there is no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, without change of body, as we've already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to his abode without a change of body. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. On this weekend, I know with the summer catching up, there is a lot of things to be done at home. There are many things happening outside of the home. So a lot of you are very, very busy. But making time, especially for hearing from the scriptures, reading the scriptures, is very, very important for all of us. And for making that time and making those sacrifices is something that will go a long ways for each and every one of us, personally and otherwise as well. Because it's through the association that each and every one of us is gaining, is benefiting, and is being encouraged to stay on the path and continue through our spiritual journey. So today we're reading from Canto 1, Chapter 15, text 47 through 48. And this is a very important text that we're reading today because it does have the message that we absolutely need to internalize as much as we can. It carries a very important message about perfection in life, about our goal in life. And so today we will be touching upon this critical topic through some illuminating examples in these two verses. So I'm going to spend a little time, talking through the examples and, helping us, get through the discussion as well in terms of addressing some of the key points and ultimately, helping, at least attempting to understand, what is this goal of life that we're trying to perfect. So some of the things that resonated with me and I would like to discuss today would be around, the key terms like constant devotional remembrance, without deviation, being washed of all material contaminations, and then the spiritual sky. There are the mentions of these in the text and in the purport in the translation that we read and that we see. And also the mention about, being able to even make it to the spiritual sky, in our very same bodies that we have. And Prabhupada has written quite a bit about it, making and citing references from other scriptures as well in the purport regarding being able to, achieve and attain our goal in our existing bodies itself. It is possible. So a little backdrop, right? I know our devotees have been covering, this topic for a while, and I don't want to repeat myself. So I'll keep that brief, but then also be able to give you some additional context so that it becomes easier for us to understand, what is happening and what does this really mean when we say, the Pandavas are retiring from what, and what exactly are they trying to do, right? So as we've been discussing, Arjuna and his brothers decide to follow in the footsteps of their eldest brother, Maharaj Yudhishthira, and prepare for their departure from this material world. So here's the scene. Okay, so a little flashback prior to Arjuna's arrival in Hastinapur, where Yudhishthira Maharaj is anxiously waiting, I should say, for his brother's return from Dwaraka. He had sent Arjuna to Dwaraka to inquire what is happening with his kith and kin, what is happening with Lord Krishna. So Arjuna comes back and he's given the message, and Yudhishthira Maharaj is completely, it's confirmed his primary fears in terms of Lord Krishna leaving, this planet and so on. And there are a set of actions that Maharaj Yudhishthira is taking, and his brothers are following in his footsteps. So prior to coming back to Hastinapur, Arjuna, okay, so here's what happens, right? So Dwaraka is completely flooded by this time. And fortunately, on the advice and the advance intimation that Lord Krishna had given Daruka is Krishna's charioteer, if you don't know who he is, a very famous personality in his own right. And so he is sent off to Dwaraka to alert all the residents of Dwaraka to evacuate from the city because the water is coming in, and Dwaraka is going to be completely inundated with water, and it's no longer going to be visible above the water levels. So therefore, Dwaraka is sent by Krishna to hurry to Dwaraka to alert all the residents of Dwaraka to make plans to evacuate and get out of Dwaraka. Similarly, Arjuna also is already in Dwaraka. So that's where Dwaraka meets Arjuna in Dwaraka, who's already there, right? And so Arjuna is also helping out in terms of getting the people out of there. That's his goal. So his goal is to take, escort all of the residents. And by then, it's mostly only the women and the children and the older men who remain in Dwaraka, because as we know, the men and the young adults are already on their way to Prabhasa. And in fact, in Prabhasa, they actually end up killing themselves, as we've been reading, in a complete state of intoxication. And there are only few people who, get out of this craziness in terms of killing each other and getting violent and so on. Krishna, Balaram, and Daruka, and there are a few others. So here's what happens. So Arjuna so Arjuna basically is taking all of the women, the children, and the older men out of Dwaraka towards Indraprastha. That's where they're headed. And on the way, we also hear about how they're attacked in a certain area where there are it's called the province of Panchala, actually, where it's infested with robbers and criminals and so on. And they see these ladies with jewels, and they're coming from the palaces of Dwaraka. Obviously, they're going to be in their opulent state, and that is prime reason for robbers. And they're very easy targets, for that matter, to be able to rob them of their jewels and their wealth and so on. And Arjuna is trying, he tries desperately to protect the wives of Krishna and to protect the people of Dwaraka from these robbers, but he is unable to do so. And it's complete madness. I mean, it's also inconceivable to think someone of Arjuna's stature who can dismiss thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people just like that with his arrows and with his martial arts, his expert capabilities in terms of the martial arts, to be able to, not be, in fact, not being able to do anything, not even being able to lift a finger. He's literally not even able to string his bow when it comes to, the situation there, the crux moment where, the robbers are trying to, they're actually taken the wives, taken the ladies with them, and they're making their way out with with the ladies and with all the jewels and everything. And Arjuna is not able to do anything to stop them. So you can imagine the frustration and how terrified Arjuna should be in that kind of a situation. He's completely distraught. He's not able to get his bow in place. He's not able to shoot even a single arrow. He's not able to, in fact, he runs after, the robbers, and he's trying to hit them with the bow, with the Gandiva bow, but of no avail. It's not helping. It's just in vain. And so the robbers make away with some of the ladies of Dwaraka. And so after that, Arjuna takes the remaining folks with him, and he's completely devastated at that point in time, right? And he's so distraught, but he continues because he has a goal. He has to get everybody out of Dwaraka in time, and he still has to take them all the way to Hastinapur, to Indraprastha, and he does that. And finally, after getting there, he decides to leave for Hastinapur, where Yudhishthira Maharaj is. Okay, so he also, by this time, he's also performed all of the various, ceremonies that are required to bury, and the funeral rites that need to be done for the people who've died. The men that have killed themselves and died in Prabhasa. Okay, so that's also happened. And so on his way back to Indraprastha from Hastinapur, on the way, he finds out, he learns about Vyasadev, doing pilgrimage in that area. So he decides to pay a visit, pay his respects to Vyasadev. So when he goes there, he breaks down completely. And, there's a complete conversation there between Arjuna and Vyasadev. And he says, I don't know how this is even possible. It can only be through the plan of Krishna. Otherwise, I still feel completely useless. I couldn't do a thing to stop these robbers, that were disguised as cowherd men, who just simply took away a lot of these, the ladies from Dwaraka. So then Vyasadev explains to him and further elaborates. He said, yes, this is all according to the Lord's plan. This didn't happen just like that. It's not random, and it is not Arjuna, as we know, but this is all by Krishna's plan, that, whatever he gives, he can also take away, right? And that's why he's known as Hari. So he gives Arjuna encouragement and lets him know that this is all by Krishna's plan. There is nothing really in our control, and that he should continue doing what he should do. And in this case, he's also advising Arjuna that he should also complete his role in terms of playing out the pastimes of Krishna, because Krishna has completed his pastimes on this planet and and has left the planet. Similarly, Arjuna and the Pandavas are also advised through Vyasadev to complete their role as well and prepare for their departure. So he returns from there back to Indraprastha, where Yudhishthira Maharaj is. He delivers the message which we've been reading over the last several weeks. And so then Yudhishthira Maharaj decides, okay, this is it. We have to prepare for our departure. And so he installs Parikshit Maharaj as the emperor of the world, right, of Bharatvarsh, as his successor. And after distributing heaps of gold and valuable gems and to the Brahmins in the honor of Krishna, the five of them, the five brothers, leave, they discard their royal garments and wear very, very simple clothes like mendicants, and leave the palace. And seeing them, Draupadi, who's so attached and devoted and dedicated to her husbands, who cannot even stay for a moment without them, says, what's the point in me, living in this palace anymore? Even I'm going to leave. And so she follows them. So she goes along with them. She, lets Subhadra know that she's leaving, and then she leaves along with the Pandavas. And the scene is such that the citizens are begging and pleading the Pandavas and asking them, please stay, please stay, please stay, don't leave us and go. But the Pandavas are very resolute at that point, and headed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, they continue to swiftly move through the kingdom and into the forest. So then they're making their way towards the north. So they're heading towards the Himavat mountain. And so days go by, they're drinking very, very, they're extremely austere in terms of what they're trying to do. They're in complete silence. They're not speaking to each other. And of course, the mood is such, right, where they're constantly thinking of Lord, and they're really feeling the pain of separation from the Lord. So they're not in a mood to even speak to each other or look at anything else and admire it or anything like that. But just, they're just so fixed in thinking about the Lord and preparing for their departure. And as they do that, their consumption in terms of food and water also goes down dramatically. Okay, here they are coming from the palace where they're eating probably 4 or 5 meals a day, for that matter. They're living in all kinds of opulence, and now they're leaving. They've left all of that, and they're heading into the forest in a complete mood of austerity and separation, and all thinking about Krishna all along. So they're eating very, very little food. They're consuming very, very little water. In fact, they're drinking by now they're just drinking only 1 time a day. They take water just 1 time a day. And they're moving in complete silence. Okay, so they're moving very swiftly through the forest. And this is rough terrain again, so something that they've done in the past, but again, it's almost like a deja vu, and they're doing it all over again. They're going through the forest. They're going through some rough terrains, with very, very minimal accompaniments, if you can call it that, right? So on the way, they come to a very beautiful lake, a very effulgent lake. And out of that lake appears Agni. Agni appears, and he offers, and so then, the Pandavas, including Arjuna, offer their respects to Agni, and Agni thanks Arjuna. So there's a previous pastime that happens in the Pandava forest, where Agni is involved, and now that's a separate pastime for a lecture later. But it boils down to Agni requesting Arjuna to return the Gandiva bow, and along with the bow, Arjuna of course pays his respects, and he not only drops the bow into the lake, according to the instructions given by Agni, but also he has these inexhaustible quivers, arrows that come out, and that's how he's also been able to dismiss tens of thousands of warriors on the battlefield at Kurukshetra, right? These are quivers that never exhaust. You have arrows, and Arjuna is able to get hundreds, if not thousands of arrows at a single time, and he's able to string them and let go. So these quivers play a very, very important role, along with the Gandiva bow that Arjuna has. So Agni says, these need to be returned. Arjuna, you don't need these anymore. And Arjuna, although he had discarded all of his, royal equipment and, his clothing and his jewels and everything else, he still hung on. Up until then, he had still hung on to the Gandiva bow and the quivers. So at this point, he realizes, this is it. I need to give even this up. And so he does. He drops it in the lake, and Agni informs him and lets him know that these will be returned. Varuna will come and take these and take them back to the place where they are supposed to be. So then After that, they continue. Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas continue through their journey through the forest. And as they get to the foothills of Himavat, it's a massive, massive mountain of crazy proportions, right? I mean, there's tremendous proportions. It's huge, and it's not an easy task navigating and climbing through those mountains, especially in the attire that they had. They hadn't eaten in days, right? Very, very little food consumption. They had very little hydration. Even the bodies had already had become emaciated by that time. And as they're getting through that, Draupadi at one point, she's not able to walk any further, and she just drops to the ground. She drops to the ground, and then she gives up her life. So this is a very grim scene, and everybody is very, very concerned. Of course, Maharaj Yudhishthira is very resolute in terms of pushing forward, and so he encourages his brothers to just continue from there, even though there is this terrible loss of losing Draupadi. And shortly thereafter, Sahadeva also drops to the ground and he gives up his life. And a little while later, Nakula also gives up his life. He falls to the ground and he gives up his life. And after Nakula follows Arjuna. Arjuna also gives up his life at that point. And so this is happening, as they're making their way up and up and up and up and up. And, at the foothills, they're actually joined by a dog. A dog takes to their company and sticks to them, in terms of being with them, and is also making its way up the mountain with them. And Maharaj Yudhishthira is being questioned by Bhima. Bhima is, still the strong guy, in the family, and he's completely perturbed. He's completely puzzled as to why this is happening. So he at every point he's asking Maharaj Yudhishthira, brother, why is this virtuous person giving up her life or his life in this way? So first it was Draupadi, and Maharaj Yudhishthira responds to him saying, she although she loved all 5 brothers, she was partial to Arjuna, and therefore she gave up her life this way. So then, when Sahadeva goes, Bhima asks Maharaj Yudhishthira the same question. Why did Sahadeva have to go this way? And Sahadeva so Maharaj Yudhishthira responds saying that he was too proud of his knowledge, and therefore he had to go this way. And similarly for Nakula, Maharaj Yudhishthira responds saying that, he was too proud of his beauty, and so he left his body this way. And then when it came to Arjuna, Bhima said, Arjuna, is such a virtuous person, such a brave warrior, such a brave Kshatriya. Why did he have to die this way? And Maharaj Yudhishthira turns around and tells him, Bhima, Arjuna failed to keep his promise to kill all the Kauravas in one single day. Because he failed to keep his promise, he had to die this way. Finally, when Bhima falls to the ground, he's about to give up his life. He asks his brother, he says, brother, why am I, having to go through this? Why am I, dying this way? And Maharaj Yudhishthira is very, very fixed. There's very little emotion at that point. Like I said, the brothers were moving in silence. They were constantly in that mood, that emotion of, separation from the Lord himself. So Maharaj Yudhishthira looks at Bhima and says, Bhima, you ate without even thinking about others. You were not considerate. When you ate for yourself. Jokes apart, but it's also about being considerate, being thoughtful about whether or not the others have eaten, if there is enough food for the others. And Bhima, being Bhima, he was able to consume so much and so quickly that he really never thought about if there's going to be enough food for the others. Of course, they're royalty, so that should not be the issue. But keep in mind that even in their being royalty, they still had to go through severe austerities prior to the Battle of Kurukshetra, right? We know the sacrifices that they had to go through when they were in exile, and they had very limited quantities of everything. Food and resources were very limited. So Yudhishthira Maharaj says, you ate without even considering if there was enough for others. And then Bhima also gives up his life. So Maharaj Yudhishthira is now all by himself. Of course, he has this dog that strangely appears out of nowhere and is still sticking to him and stays with him. And so they're making their way. And Maharaj Yudhishthira is so fixed. I mean, just keep in mind, these are his brothers that he's loved so much, that he loves so much, as well as his wife, Draupadi. And they've been through so much in life. But yet the goal, he's so fixed in terms of what he needs to get done. And the instructions that were given through Vyasadev and also given by Krishna and Lord Narada and the other personalities, in terms of what Yudhishthira Maharaj had to complete. So he continues on his way up Mount Himayat. And when this is done, he suddenly out of the blue, Lord Indra appears. Okay, so, as Maharaj Yudhishthira is going through these pains and these emotions, he is not giving up, but at the same time, you can imagine, even for a normal human being, it is just too overwhelming at that point to even put one step forward. It's like you're really pushing yourself. You want to give up your life at that point in time. But here we have Maharaj Yudhishthira moving forward, continuing on his path to accomplish his goal, to do good on what he was told to do. And so, at this point, when you feel like it is almost impossible for him to take even one step further, Lord Indra appears out of nowhere. And he, actually appears in his golden chariot. And he tells Maharaj Yudhishthira, please step into the golden chariot. We're ready. We can, if you're good with that, we can then make our way to the heavens, to the higher planets. So Maharaj Yudhishthira is so distraught at this point, and with the loss of his brothers and everything, he's like, no way am I going to leave them behind. I should also give up my life, on this path. Why do I need a golden chariot? Why do I need, the heavenly planets? Let me just give up my life here. So Indra says, no, that's not the plan. You need to get, come with me, and I can take you to the higher planets. But he says no. Maharaj Yudhishthira says no, and this goes on for a while. And after a while, Indra convinces Maharaj Yudhishthira that this is very important and that he should be going with Indra to the higher planets. And at that point, Yudhishthira says, "Okay, I will go, but on the agreement that I'm able to even bring this dog along." And Indra is looking at him, completely puzzled, baffled. He's like, "I'm taking you to the heavenly planets. You're asking me to take this dog with you. Why are you so attached to this dog?" And Maharaj Yudhishthira, being Maharaj Yudhishthira, he has that Kshatriya spirit. It's his will and his intentions to protect are always there. That's inherent. That's intrinsic to him. So he says, "No, this dog has been with me. I've been giving it's under my shelter, and it is my duty even now to take care of this dog. It's not out of attachment per se, but it is more out of his sense of duty to protect the dog." So he says, "No, I'm not going to go. If this dog is not going to go with me, I'm not going to be coming with you." So this goes on for a while as well. And Indra says, "Dogs are not allowed in heaven." So then Maharaj Yudhishthira says, "Sorry, then if that's the case, I am staying where I am. I will continue on the path that I was on. Thank you, but no thank you." And it comes to a complete halt at that point, the conversation. And when that happens, guess what? Lord Narada appears. Sorry, before I get there, before Lord Narada even appears, it is the dog that reveals itself. So it transforms itself into Dharmaraj. Okay, and immediately, and this is Maharaj Yudhishthira's father, right? So Maharaj Yudhishthira immediately falls to the ground, pays his respects to his father, and is completely surprised, as to, why this was happening. So then after that, Maharaj Yudhishthira agrees to get on the golden chariot with Lord Indra, and then they start making their way towards the higher planets. And as they're going through the different realms, he sees different things. There are a lot of celestial beings that are coming, and they're showering flowers on Maharaj Yudhishthira. And at that point, he even sees Lord Narada. And then Lord Narada not only appears, but he glorifies Yudhishthira. And he says, Maharaj Yudhishthira, you're so special. You're so dedicated to the Lord's service that you've accomplished more than any of the residents of even Swargalok, for that matter, right? Than anyone there. And so he says, just solely based on that alone, Maharaj Yudhishthira is perfectly qualified to even go not only to Swargaloka, but even beyond into the spiritual realm in this existing body. So he gives reasons as to why Maharaj Yudhishthira is so qualified with all the things that he's done in service to Krishna, that he is absolutely perfectly qualified in terms of being able to make it to the spiritual realm, even in his existing body. So Maharaj Yudhishthira continues, as he's moving through the chariot, and at one point is still in the material realm, but in the much higher realm of this material universe, he sees Duryodhana sitting on a golden throne. Yes, Duryodhana. Are you shocked? Yeah, so was Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was shocked. Duryodhana sitting on a throne, that was a golden throne. I mean, in the higher realms of this material universe, really? Does he really deserve to be there? And so he turns around and he asks Narada and says, what actually asks Indra? And he says, how is this even possible? And Duryodhana is a great Kshatriya. So Indra is responding to him and he says, Duryodhana is a great Kshatriya. And he gave up his life on the battlefield in the presence of Lord Krishna. And therefore, he also gets the benefit. So he gets some benefit, not the benefit that Maharaj Yudhishthira, was receiving, but instead he gets the benefit of being promoted to the higher planets. Okay, higher planets within this material universe, which means it is still a very temporary place. So he is promoted, but we don't know for how long. It could be much, 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 much longer than our lives here in, on planet Earth. But definitely, temporary, because after a certain point, there's a finite point at which he will either go up or go down. But in most cases, it is, he would likely come down to one of the lower planets and then perfect his life before going back. So that, is the explanation that Lord Indra gives. So there in that space, in that planet where Duryodhana is, it's not clear whether it was Swargaloka or not, but there's a lot of opulence where he sees Duryodhana. There are beautiful palaces, there's so much, there are beautiful flowers and beautiful landscapes. There's beautiful people there. There are a lot of celestial beings that are, roaming the areas there in that proximity. And these are just beyond anyone's imagination. Actually, when you think about it, we see a lot of beautiful places on the earth. We see beautiful pictures of resorts and other places like Bali, and there are so many places, hundreds, if not thousands, of places which are so unique, so special, things that we wouldn't otherwise see if we hadn't seen them in these pictures and videos and so on. But the place where Maharaj Yudhishthira is at this point is even beyond all of that. It's beyond imagination, for that matter. It's so pretty, it's so beautiful, it's so peaceful. But Yudhishthira Maharaj is so distraught, he is so disgusted, with, all of these opulences. At that point, he's like completely renounced. He's only thinking about Krishna. He still hasn't, his mind hasn't deviated one bit. He's still thinking about Krishna. He's completely fixated. He's in total absorption about, Krishna and the separation that he's experiencing from Krishna, the separation that he's experiencing from his brothers, the separation that he's experiencing from his virtuous wife, Draupadi. So he turns around to Indra and says, please, I'm not interested in any of this stuff, all these opulences, these golden palaces and all of that stuff. Please, just take me to where I can, see the Lord and see my brothers again. So Indra is basically telling him, okay, so one of the things that I missed was Yudhishthira Maharaj says, when he first, sorry, not Yudhishthira Maharaj, but when Indra approaches Yudhishthira Maharaj in the beginning, he says, come into the chariot. And, during the course of the conversation, Yudhishthira Maharaj is saying, no, I want to be with my brothers. I want to be with, my wife. I need to take care of them. And I will give up my life here on the mountain, right? So one of the pieces of conversation that happens between the two of them is Lord Indra assures Yudhishthira Maharaj and says, if you come with me, I will take you to your brothers. I will take you to Draupadi. Okay. So that is also something, that finally gets Yudhishthira Maharaj to a point to say, okay, I will come with you, but I need to take my dog also, take this dog also with me. Okay. So that's the piece of conversation that I missed, but just to put that in context, right? So here Maharaj Yudhishthira at this point says, I'm not interested in any of these opulences. Please let me be, please take me to where my brothers are. You promised me, you assured me that you would, that I would reunite with my brothers and with Draupadi. So please take me there instead. So then Lord Indra asks his attendants to escort Maharaj Yudhishthira to his brothers. Then suddenly the whole landscape changes. And Yudhishthira Maharaj is enveloped in total darkness. He sees frightful beings, ghostly beings like demons and, floating through the air. He then starts to see rotting corpses, and he sees wastelands. He sees blazing fires, and then the air also starts to smell so foul. And vultures and crows are flying about, and they have beaks made of iron. So Maharaj Yudhishthira is totally puzzled. So one moment there was all these opulences, these beautiful palaces, the celestial beings, these beautiful landscapes and flowers and fragrances and all of that. And then all of a sudden, almost like a change in scene, just like that, suddenly everything goes dark. And in this darkness, he is starting to see these kinds of things, frightful beings and the demons and all kinds of, animals that are scary. And even the smell is smelling foul. The smells are very foul, as well as, with the rotting corpses and all of that. So he's like, something must be wrong here. I must be in a dream, not just a dream, but a nightmare. This just cannot be. Why would I have to be in this? Am I in hell? Am I in the wrong place by mistake or something? So he's beginning to question, and he's like, get me out of here, kind of a thing. And as he turns around, there are voices coming from the darkness, and he recognizes those voices. It's the voice of Arjuna. Arjuna saying, brother, it's me, Arjuna, I'm here. And then suddenly from another place in the darkness, there's another familiar voice. It's Bhima who's saying, brother, it's me, Bhima, I'm here. And then Sahadeva and Nakula, and then even Draupadi. And he's hearing these voices and he's like completely baffled. And then he's looking around, he's not able to see them, he can hear the voices, and those voices are so real that he says, okay, they definitely are here. And he's like, I don't know why they're here. And since I've asked to be brought to be with my brothers and my dear wife, I will, keep my word. I will stay with them. Even if this is a frightful place, even if this is the hellish of the hellish planets, I'm going to remain with these folks. I mean, with my folks. I'm not going to leave this place. So he says, I'm going to be here. So these are the virtues of Maharaj Yudhishthira, And at that point, Lord Indra returns, and with the effulgent Indra entering the scene, this whole phantasmagoria disappears. Right? It's a nightmare, right? And then Indra tells him that this was purely deception, and this was not real hell. And he says this is the only reason. The only reason that you were brought to such a situation was because you committed that slight sin. Maharaj Yudhishthira committed a slight sin. Remember what it was? He said a lie to Dronacharya on the battlefield, saying that Ashwatthama was killed. Right? He didn't say that it was Ashwatthama the elephant, although he said it under his breath. But Dronacharya, having heard that, thinking that it was Ashwatthama who died, changed his whole emotion at that point in time. Okay, so Yudhishthira Maharaj's lie, that slight lie, which again was prompted by Sri Krishna to say that, he said that, and that was enough to cause the sinful reaction that Maharaj Yudhishthira was put through at this point. Right? So the moment that was done, he had paid his dues in terms of being able to make amendments in, having lived through that short experience of going through that frightful experience of, all of the things that we just spoke about. And that is done. So now he is back in the glorious way. And Indra then takes Maharaj Yudhishthira and escorts him to a palace that is dedicated to Yudhishthira Maharaj. And now this is a beautiful place, even more beautiful than what he had seen earlier, right? This is a beautiful palace with, and there he sees his brothers there. That's even more better, right? The best. It was not the palace that was beautiful, but it was the sight of his brothers there and Draupadi there that completely pleased him, that, make him feel so happy. And he is jubilant at that point in time because he's seeing them. And along with them, he is also seeing in attendance in the assembly hall, he sees all of these warriors that had actually given up their lives on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Now here they were, in their effulgent forms, So he's so happy. So he decides to go, and take a shower. Not a shower, but a bath. And, and just outside the palace is Ganga flowing on the outside, just outside the palace. So he takes a dip in the waters. And then when he comes out of the water, his body completely transforms. He's no longer that emaciated person that he's become. And his material body, although it's still the same, takes a very effulgent golden spiritual form. It's completely spiritualized. And then as he comes out of the river and he makes his way into the palace, he sees Lord Krishna sitting on the throne there and smiling at him and waving his hand and blessing him. And he sees his brother Arjuna, paying the respects to Lord Krishna. And he sees all of his brothers and, all the other eternal associates of the Lord, and they're all there. And, he's just amazed at this whole sight that he's seeing. He's trying to relish it. He's perplexed. He's happy. There's a lot of emotion going through him at that point in time. And he's like, how can this be? How can this be? But he's happy. He's not complaining, but he's like beyond belief that he's able to, reunite with his brothers and reunite, most importantly, with Krishna. So Narada is also there, and he explains to Yudhishthira that he and his brothers and his wife are all eternal associates of the Lord. And that just as he always desires to be with the Lord also desires to be with his devotees. So he speaks of the Lord's illusory powers and explains why he does that, right? Krishna does that only to bring his devotees back to him. So Nada also reminds him, conversely, people that are attached to this material world will remain in this material world, and they cannot understand this knowledge. For them, this is completely, fictional or something that cannot happen. It's beyond their understanding. It's beyond their comprehension. So they remain in these mortal spheres where they're going from the earthly planet to a higher planet, and from the higher planet they come down, they're going up and down, up and down. Sometimes they come back to the material earth, or they could go down even further into patal lok, and the lower planetary systems. So it is people who don't understand, who don't have that, who don't get this transcendence. Janma karma chame divyam, Krishna says, right? For those who understand this divine mystery that I bring with me, will not be able to, make it back to Godhead, make it back to the spiritual world. But for those who do understand, there is no birth again for them in this material world, right? So in that sense, the Pandavas are completely liberated because they completely are fixed in thoughts of Krishna and in terms of service to Krishna throughout their lives. There was never a moment when they were not in the shelter of Krishna, feeling the shelter of Krishna, serving in the shelter of Krishna, and many times being with Krishna and feeling Krishna's presence with them, through all their difficulties, their good times and their bad times and their good times, I should say, right? So the Pandavas were always liberated, and they were merely instruments in Krishna's pastimes, right? And they recognized that. So here are some takeaways. Let me do a quick time check here. Wow, we've got only 2 minutes. So the disappearance of the Pandavas is also sublime, right? In that they only appear to have given up their bodies, their material bodies. We may think that the Lord disappeared in a different way as well, right? Krishna was shot in the foot by an arrow of a hunter, mistaking Lord Krishna's foot to be an animal, and Krishna bleeds, and after that he leaves, he disappears after that, right? He leaves his material body, but it's not a material body, so it's just like a magician who can make, Prabhupada says in his purports as well elsewhere, that it was just like a magician who can make things appear and disappear, make heads cut off from the rest of the body, in magic shows that we see. And it's similar to that, only in a grand scale. Krishna is able to, appear and disappear, and his eternal associates are also, under his plan, are also able to give up their bodies. But they're not really dying per se, as we've also discussed over the last few weeks. So these are eternal associates that come with Krishna and they go with Krishna, right? They're there for a specific purpose. They have a specific role to play. They play that role, and when the role is done, they're back, right? And they're performing these pastimes in other places. So this is something that even the intellectuals cannot understand. It is only people who have, who cultivate bhakti within them can really understand. And Prabhupada makes this point repeatedly, right? In many purports, it is the bhakti principle that applies here. When we try to analyze, when our mind is sitting in the head, we tend to analyze. But the same mind, when we bring it down into our hearts, with thinking through our hearts, then we can really understand, or at least attempt to understand these transcendental pastimes of the Lord. So the Pandavas, who are undeviated devotees of the Lord, could go back to the spiritual world in their existing forms, because they're always thinking and serving Krishna. These special souls are nitya siddhas, and therefore they can return to the spiritual realm even in their existing bodies. All right. So it's like when Maharaj Yudhishthira emerges from Ganga, He's still in his body. It's not that his body has changed, but it has changed in the sense the features and everything are still the same, but it's changed in the sense it is completely spiritualized, meaning his spiritual body is there. So there is, from what I've heard, the acharyas explained to us that there is an external and internal. The external is the material body that people get to see, right? It bleeds, it hurts, it gets thin, gets fat, all of those things happen. But there is the internal body, which is the actual body, which is the form of the spiritual body. Okay. So therefore, okay, so that's basically the transformation that we're talking about. So now getting back to the goal of human life, it should be very, very clear that we should strive to remember Krishna always, every time and all the time, right? Whenever possible. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayo, right? So Ambarish Maharaj is a great example of that. Maharaj Ambarisha was able to follow all the 9 devotional processes, in his day-to-day life. Every single day, he was always in the service of Krishna 24 hours every single day, right? He used his senses, he used his body, he used his mind, all in the worship of the Lord, right? When he was, sweeping the temple, the grounds of the temple, he would use his hands and feet, right? And so he would use his body in that way, and he would be at the temple, he would worship the Lord. So he would use his senses in that way and engage his mind in worshiping the Lord. When he would smell the flowers offered to the Lord, they were, prasad, and even the taste, for that matter, the sense of taste also was being employed by taking and accepting only foodstuffs that were offered to the Lord, right? So Ambarish Maharaj is a great example for us in terms of how one can apply themselves. I mean, we may think, how is it possible for us to be able to engage in thinking about Krishna 24 hours a day, every single day, right, for the rest of our lives? But when we hear about these examples, it is possible, right? The question is, are we there yet? Perhaps not. And in my case, definitely not. But does that mean that we can't achieve it? Scriptures and Acharya and our Acharyas, as well as Krishna himself, is saying, that's you can absolutely achieve all of this. You can achieve this. In fact, Krishna is telling Arjuna, he tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Ananyas cheta satatam yoman smarati nityashaha tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginam. Just by remembering me, simply by remembering me, it's such an easy way, right? You can come to me. So that remembrance can happen through the services, through devotional service, right? And it's not just one way to do it. Everything that we do can be connected back to Krishna, whether we're, except when we're sleeping, we have a hard time we don't have control about the dreams that we have, and sometimes even the nightmares. We want to get out of those nightmares, but we can't do anything about them. So for us, during sleeping, it can be difficult. But during our waking time, there is every opportunity for us to be able to serve the Lord, right? And we have expert guidance from our spiritual master. That is why Prabhupada also is very, very emphatic about, why we should really take guidance. We should take guidance from the right, bona fide spiritual master who's an expert, who can actually guide us in being able to engage our mind, body, senses to, hit that goal or attain that goal in terms of being able to remember Krishna for 24 hours a day, right? I know we're out of time. I would love to spend a little more time getting into some of the depths of this discussion. But I would like to stop at this point and see if there's any questions, any comments, any feedback. So the big takeaway for us is we need to practice abhyasa yoga yuktena, right? So we need to practice so that we can achieve that perfection in terms of being able to remember Krishna in everything that we do. And that's the way we can, it's a journey. It's not going to happen just overnight. So through chanting and through association. So sadhu sangha is a very, very, very important part, and so is chanting. They're like parallel lines that you see on a railway line, for instance, right? They take you from point A to point B. They take you to your destination, right, from where you start. And but they're always there. So that's the part that we need to remember, that we need to chant, we need to stay in sadhu sangha, we need to have that association to be able to take us to our ultimate goal. And it is with practice and with absolute resolution and commitment that we can stay on this journey. There will be ups and downs for us, but keep in mind that Krishna has assured us that we will make it to the destination for sure. If not now, or if not today, it could be down the road, but it will happen at some point in time, whether this lifetime or the next. So with that, I'd like to see if there is any discussion. I'm sorry, I went a few minutes over.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhu,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, very, very much for the association today. I don't know what to say, but I felt emotional when you were talking. And then I also had some questions in between, but you also answered. I felt whatever is in my heart, you were answering. Next step, what is that question? Why is that so? You're already, in few seconds, you're already answering that. So it was like I was already in this pastime. I felt I'm in this pastime with you all. Such a beautiful narration of what all happened and why it happened. Then one point of time it happened to all these great devotees of the Lord. So what are we and where are we? First of all, we are thinking, pretending to be devotee, so on and so forth, but we are not. I'm not there yet, but that also you give an answer. But I felt, it's up and down in my life. It's always there. Sometimes I yell, sometimes I cry, sometimes I happy without whatever I'm doing. But that's only it is not just purposefully. It might be just something in the disturbance in the mind or something like that. But as long as you're with Krishna, everything is great. That with the association of that word is amazing. Sorry, I was walking, so I'm not able to speak properly. And
no problem. Thank you for
very
articulating it so well. And I'm so sorry. I'm not able to hear you very clearly because of my connection on my end. But I caught the gist of it. But you're right. It is a journey, Prabhu. At the end of the day, it is the journey that we're all on. And we're so fortunate that, I am so fortunate to have you all, and to be in your association and to be able to make that progress, especially when I'm feeling down, or when I'm off track. It becomes a little less difficult for me to then get back on track here. So thank you, and I'm grateful to you all, for giving me your association.
Prabhu, I just want to have another question. All the Yadavas will die. I was just wondering what happened to Vrajana. He was also ruling for some time, right? Because he installed so many deities of Krishna. So I had that question. I don't know if you have that answer.
Very good question, Prabhu. In fact, he was not a part. He had not gone to Prabhasa. He stayed back in Dwaraka because he was still a young boy. So he was not a part of the massacre that occurred in Prabhasa. So when Daruka came back on Krishna's instructions to Dwaraka, and that's where he met Arjuna and let him know this is all that happened. And at that point, Arjuna then before he left for left with the residents of Dwaraka, he installs Vrajanath as the king. And so that's how that happens.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. I got it.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru and Gauranga.
Hare
Prabhuji,
Krishna.
yeah, it was a wonderful class. And, whenever I hear this particular pastime, even as a child, it actually bewildered me, because what we think as compassion and prescribed duties are actually turned over its head in this particular pastime. And so, how do we deal with it is a bigger question. However, there were two specific clarifications I wanted from you. The first one was, it was Bhima who had taken the vow to kill all the Kauravas. And but you mentioned that it is Arjuna who took the vow and he failed to do it, so he had to die the way he did. That is my first question. The second question I had was, one second, it's slipping my mind. Prabhuji, you just answered these. If it comes to my mind, I'll ask you the second question.
Prabhu, so what I'm doing, since I'm having such a hard time hearing you, I'm going to log in through my phone real quick, Prabhu, as we're talking. Just bear with me for just a minute. I know we're down to just a few of us here.
Sure,
so
Prabhuji.
I'm hoping that you can hear me. I'm going to mute myself on this.
Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yeah, I can hear you, Prabhuji. Can you hear me?
Yeah, this is much clear.
I logged in my phone. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So can you please repeat your question, Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhuji. What I was saying was, this pastime is, even as a child when I heard it, it was so bewildering, and even now it didn't change, because what we understand as compassion and prescribed duties are turned over its head in this particular pastime, and that leaves me, asking some questions. So I had two questions. One was related to, Bhima taking the vow that he's going to kill all the Kauravas in a single day, or through the war. But you mentioned that it is Arjuna who took
Arjuna,
the vow,
Prabhu.
and, so he failed to do that, and that's why he had to die the way he had to die. The second question is about Yudhishthira lying. I after coming to consciousness and going through so many of these classes and all those things, my understanding was anything that Krishna says is dharma, and when you do what Krishna says, you don't have to worry about any repercussion. But here, Yudhishthira was following Krishna's orders, and in spite of that, he had to undergo some, like punishment for it or retribution for it. So I'm trying to understand how these two are.
Excellent questions, Prabhu. I don't know if I am qualified to answer these questions effectively, but without speculation, again, I can, based on my readings, my understanding, I can tell you the first question, is relatively straightforward. It is Arjuna who takes the vow. When things start to go very badly, I believe, I forget, day 4 or day 5 of the battle, he vows to, kill all of the main Kauravas in one single day. So more than Bhima, so they all take vows, they all, not vows, but in Arjuna's case, he specifically takes a vow saying that I'm going to completely eliminate the Kauravas today. I'm going to do that. He basically states that and gives Maharaj Yudhishthira that confidence that he is there and he's committed, right? Now, the second question that you had, is, again, you're absolutely right. See, the premise is that whatever Krishna says, we do. If we don't do it, obviously we have, reactions we have to, and consequences we have to take care of, we have to bear personally. But in this specific case where Krishna is advised or tells Maharaj Yudhishthira explicitly to lie, it may seem like a contradiction. You may feel like, how can Krishna even advise anybody to do something like this? But this was also a part of his plan, right? And as we just discussed, whatever Krishna says is absolutely legit, it's valid, it's fine. But here's the thing. Indra also tells Maharaj Yudhishthira, this is only a deception. It's not like you are actually in the hellish planet. If perhaps if I lied like that, I mean, the hellish planet is certain, right? Definitely would be there and go through what I have to till I atone and I get out of it. But that would be for a normal human being. In this case, it's Maharaj Yudhishthira you're talking about, who's executed something on behalf of the instruction. So he's very faithfully followed the instructions of Krishna. Therefore, this is not the actual hellish planet, as I understand it. Lord Indra is saying this is specifically a deception. It's just like a nightmare. That's it. But everybody has to go through this, even if they are not actually in the hellish planet. Let's say we are as perfect as Maharaj Yudhishthira. Even Maharaj Yudhishthira had to go through this, right? So he says that everybody has to go through this, where any of the anarthas, any of the things that we've done wrong, it could be just a very quick scene change, but we go through that and Krishna is there. The best part of this is that you're back with Krishna right away. It's not like this continued infinitely. Now, for most souls who have committed crime after crime after crime over the many millions of lifetimes, obviously they're going to end up in the hellish planet, or they're going to be there for a very long time. Right? But in Yudhishthira Maharaj's case, it was only a change of scene. And the moment, that's his sin was taken care of. I mean, it's not really a sin per se, because he followed the instruction of Krishna. See, these are the things that are very subtle, Prabhu. These are things that we cannot analyze with the mind. And we have to understand that these are transcendental pastimes of the Lord, where he is, on the one hand, Maharaj Yudhishthira is following the instructions, this beautiful soul following the instruction of the Lord, but at the same time he is having to go through a situation like this. So we need to take it in with the right perspective, that Krishna is there, ultimate protection, ultimate shelter is still Krishna. That hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
But for all living beings, we have to go through this process. And in this case, the process turns out for Maharaj Yudhishthira to be just a change in scene. For most of us, it will be, a total change in location, a change in locale in software terms. So it may even be closer to permanent than infinity.
So that actually leads to the third question. I really don't want to take up other people's time, but the third question is, the four brothers and Draupadi have been through the thick and thin with Maharaja Yudhishthira, and the thing that you would have expected is a drop of like at least in the material platform, a little grieving, or at least his prescribed duty to do the last rites of these people. But what we hear is, and that's why I said this bewildered me even as a kid, and even now it bewilders me. He just walks on. So I was trying to understand, is the spiritual goal so supreme? Not that it isn't, that we even ignore our own prescribed duties, which Krishna in Bhagavad Gita very clearly says you have to do your prescribed duties. So I'm a little bewildered with what to take from that.
So, no, I'm equally bewildered there, Prabhu. So here's the situation. Okay, so the scene is such where he's not in his palace, he's not in his normal circumstances where he can actually perform all of the sacrificial rites and rituals and all those things. It's not that Maharaj Yudhishthira was in complete pain. Remember? He was in complete pain that he lost his brothers, he lost his wife, and most importantly, that he's lost the association of Krishna. But he is also, trying to leave his body. He's completely renounced. I mean, so when he leaves the palace, or when he left the palace, He was completely in a mood of renunciation. He wasn't thinking of anything. He just dropped everything, his food, his clothing, his, all of those things were gone. All the royalties were gone. He just went as a mendicant, and following him were the brothers. The brothers left. I was bewildered when I found out that, hey, the brothers left even without thinking of Draupadi. Draupadi, who was serving them for all these years, she's been so dedicated to them. Arjuna is Draupadi's favorite, right? And he also just leaves her behind, and the brothers leave her behind, and they follow Maharaj Yudhishthira because their goal is to serve Krishna. Krishna's instructions were, prepare for your departure. That's it. Don't think of anything else. Your role is done. Your time is done. So that is the level of understanding. And that understanding is not just at a mental plane, but it is completely internalized. So, and when they're doing that, nothing matters. Nothing matters, right? Is it night or day? It doesn't matter. Whether they're in the palace or outside the palace, are they, with their people or not? But as he's going through that, it's not like he's blind and he's not seeing. He's just, detached. He's detached. But at the same time, he feels like, oh, I've lost my brother, oh, I've lost my wife, I've lost so-and-so, right? So, but he's still continuing on that path. So that's the only way I can see, and considering the situation where they're in the forest, climbing up a mountain, where the terrain itself is very difficult. It's not like it's flat land either, where you can dig and you can do all of those things, right? To bury the body or, cremate or do anything like that. So Maharaj Yudhishthira is moving with that single sense of purpose that I need to be back with Krishna. I need to complete, what I was given to do, the task that I was given to do. So he's missing his brothers, but more importantly is to fulfill that task. So he's so fixed on that. That's the vyavasayatmika buddhi, they say, right? It is that resolute single-mindedness to be able to complete that task in service of Krishna. That's the greatness. We cannot. We would be completely overwhelmed by that point, right? Not only the physical exhaustion, but losing our kith and kin, who are so close to us, we would have given up our life then and there. We would be gone, right? So that's the takeaway from this.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else? Any other questions, comments?
Prabhu, I just had another one. I'm sorry. Maybe you did not hear earlier. So anyway, this the whole story you narrated, the references is from Mahabharata, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Primarily, yes.
Yeah, and then the second one, I was thinking when you said this, the third question, I was thinking about in the battlefield, we are all fighting against an enemy, and somebody dies, they move forward to accomplish the task. So in a similar way, I'm feeling, doesn't matter if they have to accomplish the task for looking at, serving Krishna. One is done, okay, keep going, move on in my life. It's a kind of feeling I got that feeling. I don't know if it is right.
Great point, Prabhu. Great point. Yes, because at the end of the day, they are also Kshatriyas, right? Kshatriyas never turn back. Bodies may fall in front of them, but they continue to move forward. They move forward. You're absolutely right. And if they turn around, they're shot by their own people, right? That we see even now, in our battles now, the wars that we have now. My father would, he was an army officer, right, as you know, and he was in several wars, the Chinese aggression, the Indo-Pakistan war, and so on. And he would say, as they would be advancing, he would see, bodies, people, soldiers running, and, their heads are lopped off by, shells and stuff like that. But the body is still running because of the momentum, right? The body is running, several feet before the body finally falls, even without the head, all right? And people are not thinking about, oh, am I going to die? They're all moving. Their adrenaline is so high that they're just running forward. They're not thinking about danger at that point. They're just moving forward like, they're not thinking through some of the things. Because the moment you start spending time thinking of those things, the mental state becomes weak. right? And then the sole purpose of why we are there and what we're trying to do is completely lost. But for these folks that you're talking about, these are great, exalted personalities who are Kshatriyas. And so they're built right from the day they were born. They've been trained to fight and to protect. And so the Kshatriyas are always moving forward. So great point. Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the reasons as well to answer Radhakunj Bihari Prabhu's question.
Thank you, Prabhu. I feel like you have to continue some more time. I can't stop hearing all this pastimes. Amazing.
There are a lot of details, Prabhu, a lot of details, but you know, they can only do so much in a class, but it's so nice. So if you get a chance, read the Mahabharata, you know, written by
for some reason, I'm not a reader, Prabhu. I don't read, I just only hear. That's my task. It's in my life.
Do that. I think even that is good enough for us. Yes.
Yeah, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. And thank you again. Lingaraj Prabhu, I will take your permission. I am fine, but if there are no other questions, I would like to end the discussion at this point.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for the wonderful lecture. Actually, I have one comment on Prabhu's question about why Yudhishthira had to see the hell. I was listening to one of Srila Prabhupada's lectures a long time back, and he said that the reason Yudhishthira had to see the hell for a moment because he hesitated to follow Krishna's order. So that was a different perspective I heard that time. So just wanted to share.
Excellent point. Excellent point. No, thank you so much for sharing that, but that is spot on. Spot on. Absolutely. So thank you for jogging my memory and, you know, bringing that to light, because Radhakunj Bihari Prabhu, that answers your question as well, right? So it is spot on. It was that just a fraction of a second that Maharaj Yudhishthira hesitated to follow the instructions of Krishna. That was enough for him to get this reaction. Great point. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Prabhuji. I think that makes a lot of sense when compared to any other thing. You fail to follow Krishna's order. That is having consequences. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons also why they tell us, we should be very careful about following our spiritual master's instructions, because the spiritual master is working on behalf of Krishna. Right. And so when I distinctly remember, some of our senior devotees telling us, see, when the spiritual master says, that's a snake, don't pick it up. Don't pick it up. But he may turn around and say, no, that is a rope, pick it up. And even if it is a snake, you still pick it up. That should be the level of faith that we have for our spiritual master, for Krishna. That's the only way, without even thinking twice. We should never doubt our spiritual master. Never. That should not even come to our heads. We should always follow. There are reasons why our spiritual master tells us to do certain things in a certain way. And they're experts. They know what they're saying. They know what they're doing. They're empowered by Krishna. So we should keep that in mind always. And so thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you for bringing that up, because that has a lot of implications around how we conduct ourselves and how we, respect and do our services for the Lord through our spiritual master. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Hare Krishna, please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for your wonderful association. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.